You are listening to We Are the Compassionate Revolution. I'm your podcast host, therapist, author, boundaries guide, Molly Moon. If you are a compassionate person and you want to know your worth, set better boundaries, live from your truth, and operate in your fullness, then I am so glad you've joined us. You ready? Let's get started. I want to talk today about trust and compassionate people. And I say this because many of us have been called naive or too trusting. And I'm going to answer a reader letter today in a way that I hope you will find helpful. Because there is a truth, actually, that compassionate people can be too trusting. And yet I also do not want to pathologize our trust. I do not want to pathologize having an open heart or vulnerability. All of these things are great and amazing strengths, truly strengths. But when we don't understand where our boundaries are, unfortunately, these things can end up getting hooked into some really toxic dynamics that cause us a great deal of harm. So with that, let's dive into our listener letter. Dear Molly, over our 8-year marriage, my partner has lied to me so many times, sometimes about small things, but sometimes about big things. He always denies it until I finally prove that it's true. Then he will admit the lie, but be very sorry and say it will never happen again. Of course, eventually it does. About 6 months ago, he had a religious experience and has said now that he will never lie again. The problem is that I still don't trust him. He says I need to work on my control issues. One part of me thinks he's wrong. I don't want to control him. I want to be able to trust him. But another part of me worries that he's right. Am I just being too controlling? I feel guilty and like I'm being a terrible partner. And now, according to him, I may have a spiritual problem too. Do you have any advice for me? Thanks, compassionate person in New York State. I think a lot of compassionate people can relate to this question one way or another. Our outward circumstances might be a little bit different, but many of us have had the experience of dealing with someone we care about who really struggles to be able to tell the truth. We learn over time that their words can't be trusted, and yet I don't know if the word demand would be correct. There is a demand that we trust them, but there's also an earnestness, what feels like very real emotions, longing for us to trust them. And then, if you're like many of us, the way it all goes is you do, and then you find out your trust was misplaced because, no, sure enough, they are not trustworthy, and so the cycle goes. So I really feel for you, this listener in New York State, and everybody in this situation. I have some thoughts today that I think might help give a little bit of clarity and direction to you. Though they may not necessarily be fun to hear depending on what you were hoping to hear. My first thought is this, that I consider that kind of behavior to be a red flag. Not on the compassionate person's part, but on the part of the person who has lied many times and is now declaring that he is to be trusted. And is actually saying that the problem here in the relationship right now is her lack of trust. Now, the reason why I would consider that a red flag, as compassionate people, most of us were taught, programmed is probably a better word for it, to keep the people pleased no matter what. So in a situation like this, where somebody is declaring that they can now be trusted because they said so, and yet their behavior over and over again in the past indicated that trusting their words was a very bad idea because their behavior wasn't going to match their words. when somebody declares they must be trusted, or they're going to give you pushback, they're going to blame you. They're going to say, it's you. You're the person with the character issue. If you don't trust them because they said so, you clearly have control issues or whatever. That's a red flag to me, because that's really, really disrespectful behavior. However, when we have been programmed to keep the people pleased no matter what, it's so hard to see that. Because we're busy reading the temperature of the room. We're busy checking in with their facial expressions. We're busy wanting there to be peace and no conflict in the relationship that evening or whenever this is being brought up. And so you know that if you bring up your lack of trust, it's going to cause conflict, or it's going to result in blame or condemnation on you, which is really exhausting. I'm imagining it's been really hard. The first time you realized there was a lie, that was probably really hard. And now you've got 8 years of this. So you know the patterns. And to be told that you must now trust after 8 years of untrustworthy behavior probably feels a little bit offensive. I bet there are feelings or sensations in your body that might even feel like anger. And yet, again, if you have been conditioned to keep the people pleased, what do compassionate people do with those feelings? Most of us stuff them right back down. Or we ignore them, or we suppress them, or we actually feel wrong for having them. But I want to tell you, whatever feelings you're having, you're not wrong for having them. It is a really confusing situation to be in when you love somebody and you want to trust them, and yet you also know that you can't, at least not yet. And it's especially confusing and even hurtful when you were told you were to blame for the lack of trust. But here's the facts. And I hope that your partner did have a meaningful religious experience and will grow from that experience and actually truly change. But as of right now, the demand that you trust him and the declaration that you're having a control problem, you have control issues if you don't trust him, is actually a red flag, relationally speaking. Because trust is not something that you can just tell somebody to have. Trust in a relationship is earned. It happens over time. And actually, it's really, really important to be able to trust the people that you're closest to, because trust creates an environment of emotional safety. You can't have emotional safety in a relationship if you can't trust the other person. So trust is really important. And I do hope that your partner is learning how to grow into more trustworthy behavior. However, he also needs to understand that trust, if you think about trust versus lies, trustworthy behavior versus untrustworthy behavior, it is a lot like planting seeds in a garden. So your partner has planted seeds in a garden that are coming up and bearing fruit. He has planted the seeds of untrustworthy behavior. He's planted lies, and they came up and they bore fruit, and you found those lies, and then he still lied about the lies until you brought the fruit of his lies to him, put it in front of his face, and only then did he finally admit it. But then he declared it was never going to happen again. And what happened? Well, it happened again. More lies were planted. Every time a lie was planted, you had to experience being lied to even about the lies, and you also had to experience the consequences, the fruit of those actions in your relationship, and it creates an environment where emotional safety is missing, which really sucks, because emotional safety it's a rich, rich environment that nourishes and nurtures love. And it sounds like you both would like to be able to have emotional safety in the relationship. It sounds like that is something that is a goal for both of you. I know it's a goal for you. It sounds like he is currently saying it is a goal for him. What he needs to understand is the way that he grows your trust in him is by planting seeds of trustworthy behavior and being patient because it takes time for seeds to grow and bear fruit. And you, after 8 years of dealing with lies, you are going to need to have some time seeing steady, consistent, repeated, trustworthy behavior before your body is going to be able to trust him. And that's not you having a control issue. You not trusting someone who hasn't behaved in a trustworthy way is actually wise instincts. That is wisdom coming from your body, telling you that this person has not yet proven themselves as trustworthy. Even though I want to trust him, even though I wish I could trust him, this person's behaviors have yet to show up in a consistent way over time that proves that I can relax and trust. I would say the chances that the person who needs to listen to that is actually listening to this podcast are slim. Oftentimes it's we compassionate people are the ones listening to this. And many times what we need to look at is a little bit different. So the person who's struggling with being trustworthy needs to start behaving consistently over and over again in trustworthy ways and trust that over time, that fruit will eventually result in somebody who can't help but trust you because you're so trustworthy. I mean, if he is amazingly trustworthy and continues to show up in really healthy ways for 3 years, for 4 years, for 5 years, and you're still not trusting him after he continuously shows up over and over again in trustworthy ways, okay, then maybe you will want to look at your control issues. But for right now, it's been 6 months. So it is perfectly okay that your body's not ready to trust him. What I want to talk about that can be really helpful for compassionate people, and I actually bring this up in my free mini course. And if you haven't taken it, I would highly recommend it. I have a feeling I know what trap you will score in when you take the quiz. And if anyone's listening and wants to take that, you can find the free mini course at boundary.com/breakthrough, or just go to boundary.com and you can find it in the menu. But there is a toxic relationship dynamic that traps many, many compassionate people who are loyal, who are faithful, who are loving, who really want to see their relationship work no matter what. And that trap, what it ends up doing, because we don't know our boundaries, because we don't know the boundaries for these amazing qualities that we have, that trap ends up hooking into our loyalty, our long-suffering, our ability to forgive, our ability to be patient and wait for a hoped-for outcome. All good traits, again. But without boundaries, this trap ends up hooking into those incredible qualities and traits and keeps us looped into a cycle where we end up forgiving somebody once, twice, 346 times, 347 times, 348 times. And there's a certain point where we have forgiven or overlooked or given them another chance so many times that it feels silly to stop now. Because what happens with us is we're like, well, I've already given them so many chances. If I quit now, what if they're going to change tomorrow? What if the miracle's right around the corner? So we stay, we stay, and we stay. And unfortunately, we receive the consequences of their unloving or untrustworthy actions and end up paying a price that is way, way, way too high. If only we had known way back in the beginning when we decided to give them the second chance, the third chance, the 5th chance, the 17th chance. If we'd only known back then the price we were going to pay, we never would have chosen to pay it. However, we end up getting stuck in a trap where it's a 342nd time and we're like, I've already given 342nd chances, 42 chances. What's 343? Why not? What have I got to lose? And I go more into that. I won't talk about that further here because I talk about that much more inside of the mini course. But it is a trap that hooks us. Why? Because we don't know where the boundaries are. And there actually are boundaries that really can help us with dynamics like this, where we understand that, yes, of course we want to love. Yes, of course people make mistakes. Yes, of course we want to give people second chances. But we don't want to do so at the cost of our own self-respect. We don't want to do so in ways that cause us to take on all the consequences of their harmful actions while they walk away without any of the consequences. And that's something we often fail to consider because we're often so empathic, so kind, so helpful, so faithful that we're like, I can take some extra consequences. I'm strong enough. I can handle the pain of this. If only they'll change, it will be worth me handling the pain of this, right? But again, because it ends up happening over and over, the toxic trap we end up getting into is that we just carry the pain for their bad behavior and they just keep engaging in bad behavior. And it doesn't stop. And it drains us of our essence, of our life force, of our energy. It drains us of our emotional health. It drains us of our needs, our basic needs. Our physical health a lot of times gets impacted. It really, really does cause us a lot of damage. But the good news about all of that is that boundaries really show us a completely different way where we can still stay loving and we can still be forgiving if we want to. We can still be amazingly loyal, but we have boundaries. So we're also loyal to ourselves, as opposed to our loyalty causing us to abandon ourselves because we think that's what love asks of us. So at the end of the day, of course, this is your marriage and your process, and I'm not living in your situation. I don't know all of the nuances involved, but the thing that's coming up most strongly on my heart, I guess, is that I hope things are changing. That would be really, really cool. It sounds like it maybe has been 6 months since you've caught a lie, and wouldn't that be nice? I would love that for him, and I would love that for you both. However, I also want to say that when somebody demands we trust them, but they have not yet earned that trust from us, what they're actually doing, even if they don't know they're doing this, what they're actually doing is telling us to disrespect our own instincts, to dishonor the wisdom of our body, the wisdom of our intuition. And that's not okay. Trust is not something that can be forced. Trust is something that must be earned. And that what I would love to see is for your partner to step into a bit more humility and understand that there are 8 years of harm done that need to be repaired. That he can repair that harm by engaging in trustworthy actions over and over and over again in the little things and in the big things, when you're looking, when you're not looking. That's how he can help you move into a more trustworthy attitude, isn't quite the right word, or more trustworthy energy towards him. He can help that, but he also must be patient. You were patient over and over for 8 years, right? It is now his turn to be patient back. He must be patient. Trust doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't even happen in 6 months, but it can and will happen in time if he continues to show up in a trustworthy way. And for you, I want you to know that it is okay if you don't want to give 347 million more chances. It's okay if you're running into a spot where you're saying, you know what, I want to be able to trust you, but I also want to live a life that feels fun, that feels joyful, that feels meaningful. I want to have a relationship where there's emotional safety. And as you discover your own true boundaries, you can both support him and his changes while also staying very, very true to you. In fact, with pro-relational boundaries, they actually really support healthy relationships because they show us how to honor the other person while we also honor ourselves instead of having to pick one or the other. And that's a beautiful thing here. You don't have to dishonor him in order to trust your own intuition, your own instincts. You can very lovingly say, I just don't trust you yet. I hope I will trust you. I know that can happen over time. For anybody who's wanting to actually dive in and get some help with pro-relational boundaries right now, my Boundaries 101 class is back. It is amazing. It is a great way to dive in and get some really, really solid tools that can provide immediate help right away. And you can get Boundaries 101 at boundary.com/101, or just go to boundary.com, find it in the menu. That would be my number one suggestion is let's hope that your husband continues to change and grow, and let's hope that he learns that he cannot demand trust, that he must earn trust. He must be patient with you. And it's no fair calling it your control issues, because it's not. You're actually having a very sensible, wise response. Your body knows that, I need more time. I need to see this, feel this, experience this safety for some time before I'm going to be able to believe it, because it was 8 years of not having it. So that is not your control issues. That is a very wise body. But the thing that I would recommend most for you is that you discover your true boundaries, get some good solid boundary tools in your belt so that you know where you start and stop. You know how to support him, how to honor him, how to love him, and you also know how to support, love, and honor yourself. So that way, if somebody happens to say, hey, the problem must be you, you've got control issues, you know where your boundary lines are, and nope, this is not my control issues. This is you being really uncomfortable with how long it takes to rebuild trust after it's been broken. And I'm going to give that energy right back to you and not take it upon myself. Because compassionate people's strengths are qualities, for those of you who are loyal, who are faithful, who don't give up, who want to give people second chances, who believe the best. Man, these qualities are really, really amazing, and our world could really use them. But what we don't want to have happen is get them sucked into toxic relationship dynamics, because then all those qualities do is feed destructive behavior and don't help anyone or anything, including you. Now, this dynamic can happen more than just marriages. Of course, it can happen in family. It happens a lot, actually, in family or extended family relationships. It can happen with friendships. It can happen in workplaces. But I hope that this particular focus today has been helpful for some of you who might be dealing with something similar. We compassionate folks have really been trained to kind of beat ourselves up, to blame ourselves when things aren't going well in a relationship, and sacrifice our own instincts, our own feelings, our own wants and needs in order to try to make things work. And this is one of those times where sacrificing your own instincts, sacrificing your own intuition, sacrificing your own need for emotional safety would not help anything. It wouldn't help you. It wouldn't help your partner grow. It wouldn't help the relationship grow. So lovingly holding firm to what you know to be true, that trust just isn't there yet. That is actually a very, very loving thing to do. And I want to encourage you to keep doing it. Again, get better boundaries. Also, I cannot emphasize that enough. We haven't been taught our boundaries. So how can we know what we've never been taught, right? It's not our fault that we don't know our boundaries, but we've got to get really strong pro-relational boundaries so that we can walk in confidence in areas just like this and really stand for love and stop letting our energy be drained into toxic dynamics that don't do any of us any favors. I want to thank the listener who wrote in with this question. It was amazing. I am sure that by sharing what you're going through, I think that this conversation probably ended up helping a lot of people. So thank you so much. If for anybody out there who has a question that they would like me to answer or share my thoughts on, you know where to go, boundary.com/podcast. Boundary.com also has a whole lot of great boundaries resources. Have a look, see what you like, get what you want. There's a lot of good stuff there. Some of it's totally free. And with that, sending you all love wherever you're at in the world. And I will see you on the next episode. My compassionate friend, I am so glad you're with us. We are the compassionate revolution. We are the change the world needs, and we're becoming it. If you loved this episode, please share it with a friend or give this podcast a 5-star review. I'd appreciate it so much. And if you'd like to get practical and work with me more closely on boundaries, you can come visit me at boundaried.com. That's boundaried with a D.com for amazing resources. Because this is how we do it. One action at a time. We are moving into our power. And I'm so proud to be in this movement with you.